One for you, Dr. Carril. So what was Nikita explaining about was about there is like a organization, there's like a village that they can to produce their own honey. So it's like a very natural, and it's really good because they can sell all of the products all over the Indonesia gitu. So yeah, it's really cool. Oke, next slide mungkin. Oke, nah seperti yang sudah Nikita tadi sampaikan nih teman-teman. Jadi pada webinar kali ini kita juga akan memberikan door prize bagi teman-teman. Jadi oke, mungkin sebelum kita kasih tahu door prize-nya bagaimana ketentuan dan lain-lainnya, aku mau lihat dong reaksi teman-teman di sini. Mungkin boleh dong dikasih jempolnya gitu yang tertarik untuk mendapatkan door prize gitu, atau
Boleh,
mungkin
boleh.
emoji-emoji lain.
Wah, pada excited banget ya. Mau dapat door
Pasti
prize.
dong. Oke, mungkin Katlia bisa nih untuk menjelaskan bagaimana caranya agar mendapatkan door prize ini.
Oke, boleh. Panitia mungkin boleh next slide.
Ya.
Oke, tata cara untuk mendapatkan door prize nih teman-teman. Jadi, peserta dapat mendokumentasikan webinar ini dan mengunggahnya pada story Instagram menggunakan filter yang udah ada di link tersebut ya teman-teman. Lalu, peserta dapat mengkreasikan story IG tersebut sekreatif mungkin. Lalu, jangan lupa untuk tag IG Kokamuhi dan culture.sv. Selanjutnya, peserta dengan story IG terbaik akan mendapatkan door prize dari kami. Wah, pasti menarik banget ya.
Iya, pastinya dong. Oke. Next slide, please.
Oke.
Oh, mungkin ini kita lihat dulu nih videonya gimana.
Boleh, boleh, boleh.
Oh iya, tuh. Waduh, lucu sekali ya ini virtual Instagramnya.
Wow.
Oke.
Oke, selanjutnya nih. Sekarang nih yang udah kita tunggu-tunggu, kita bisa kenalan dengan pembicara atau tour guide kita yang hebat dan luar biasa banget pada pagi hari ini, yang udah jauh-jauh datang dari Amerika nih teman-teman. Meskipun ya masih secara virtual.
Bener banget nih Katlia. Jadi pembicara kita ini nih teman-teman adalah seorang ilmuwan. Beliau telah belajar mengenai lebah selama lebih dari 20 tahun. Beliau menerima gelar Bachelor of Science and Master of Science di Utah State University dan PhD dari Southern Illinois University in Carbondale.
Oh ya, selain itu Kak Arya dan teman-teman, beliau adalah juga rekan penulis dari The Bees in Your Backyard, A Field Guide to North America's Bees. Sekarang beliau juga sedang mengerjakan dua panduan lapangan nih teman-teman untuk lebah, serta melakukan beberapa survei berskala besar tentang lebah di utara New Mexico. Nah, beliau adalah Dr. Carril. Hello, Dr. Carril. Good morning. Well, it's 8 here. Maybe you want to have a brief greeting to all the participants here, like we learned before about Bahasa Indonesia. You could say selamat pagi teman-teman.
I can greet. I can say selamat pagi,
teman-teman. Okay, that's cool.
Did I do it? Okay.
Yeah,
Yes,
you
did it.
well. So, are you excited today, Dr. Carril?
I am so happy to be talking to you all the way around the world on this beautiful morning.
We're very glad to hear that. How do you feel today?
I feel great. I feel excited to talk to people and tell them about something that I love very much.
Oh my God. Okay, can't wait to have a further discussion with you, Dr. Carril. Thank you very much. Okay, next slide, please.
Oke, nah nih untuk teman-teman yang sekiranya memiliki sedikit kendala dalam berbahasa Inggris, tidak perlu khawatir karena kita juga memprovide materi dalam bentuk draft yang sudah dikirim di grup. Teman-teman bisa banget untuk buka dua layar, jadi layar di kiri untuk Zoom dan layar di kanan untuk melihat draft materi yang sudah kita berikan melalui WhatsApp group. Kemudian terdapat juga fitur subtitle otomatis dalam bahasa Inggris yang terdapat di layar Zoom. Jadi teman-teman bisa banget untuk mengaktifkan fitur tersebut supaya bisa mendapatkan informasi yang lebih clear gitu dari pembicara kita pada pagi hari ini. Kemudian peserta tetap akan dipandu dalam Zoom dalam bahasa Indonesia melalui chat box. Jadi sekiranya nanti ada beberapa istilah-istilah terminologi seperti itu, teman-teman tidak perlu khawatir karena nanti kita akan juga memprovide maknanya melalui chat box seperti itu. Next slide, please.
Oke, selanjutnya untuk protokol interaksi selama Zoom berlangsung, di sesi presentasi ini akan terdapat sesi di mana pembicara akan memberikan sedikit pertanyaan nih teman-teman berupa yes or no, ranking 1 sampai 5, pilihan ganda, dan cloud word. Nah, untuk yes or no ini, peserta bisa menggunakan fitur yes sebagai tanda checklist, lalu untuk tanda silang melambangkan no. Lalu untuk ranking dari 1 sampai 5 dan pilihan ganda, peserta akan diberikan Zoom poll untuk menjawab. Lalu terakhir untuk cloud word, Dr. Carril akan memberikan link Mentimeter dan bisa diisi oleh peserta nantinya.
Yes. Nah, mungkin teman-teman yang masih belum menemukan fitur tersebut, teman-teman bisa ke reaction. Nah, di sana sudah langsung ada tanda checklist dan tanda silang. Nah, jadi seperti ini teman-teman. Ya, itu menandakan yes.
Ini
Dan
untuk menandakan
silang,
no.
yes, benar sekali.
Oke.
Oke. Next slide, please. Oke, nah, izin mengingatkan lagi nih teman-teman selama mengikuti Zoom, bagi teman-teman yang belum merubah format penamaannya, teman-teman dapat merubah format penamaan dengan nama _institusi. Kemudian selama webinar berlangsung, peserta dapat menonaktifkan mic kecuali diminta untuk mengaktifkan mic atau sesi Q&A seperti itu. Kemudian peserta juga diharapkan dapat berperan aktif selama webinar berlangsung dengan menjawab pertanyaan pembicara, bertanya saat sesi Q&A, dan mengaktifkan fitur kamera seperti itu teman-teman. Dan jangan lupa menggunakan virtual background yang sudah kita berikan. Oke, kemudian yang terakhir, peserta diharapkan saling menghargai dan bersikap sopan selama acara.
Oke, selanjutnya untuk protokol bertanya, peserta boleh mengirimkan pertanyaan selama sesi presentasi melalui fitur Q&A. Terus, jika pertanyaan dalam bahasa Inggris, teman-teman bisa langsung raise hand agar bisa menanyakan langsung nih ke Dr. Carril setelah dipersilakan oleh moderator. Atau bisa melalui fitur Q&A juga. Lalu, jika pertanyaan diajukan dalam bahasa Indonesia itu juga tidak masalah. Pertanyaan bisa diajukan dalam kolom Q&A terlebih dahulu, kemudian nanti moderator akan membantu menginterpretasikan pertanyaan tersebut dalam bahasa Inggris kepada Dr. Carril. Peserta dapat menggunakan fitur chat box jika terkendala ya teman-teman dengan jaringan dan lain sebagainya.
Oke.
Next.
Nah, tanpa berlama-lama lagi teman-teman, sekarang sudah waktunya nih kita untuk melakukan pertualangan bersama pembicara kita yang sangat luar biasa, Dr. Olivia Carril. Teman-teman pasti udah pada siap kan? Aku yakin dong. Boleh dong reaction-nya?
Oke, semangat banget dong.
Boleh dong dikasih reaction dan emoticon-emoticon lucunya di Zoom. Oke.
Oke, teman-teman, sembari kita melakukan petualangan pada hari ini, boleh nih sambil menyiapkan pertanyaan untuk sesi Q&A nanti ya. Kami juga akan memberikan deskripsi tambahan untuk beberapa kosakata atau istilah terminologi yang akan kami jabarkan di kolom chat.
Yap, benar sekali nih Kak Lia. So, without any further ado, kali ya tanpa berlama-lama lagi, Dr. Carril, you may lead the mini adventures of bees. To Dr. Carril, are you ready for the adventure?
I am ready. I'm very
Okay.
excited.
Great.
Okay, great. Yeah, I believe that everyone here is super excited too to begin the adventure as well. So, without any further ado, Dr. Carril, the time is yours.
Do you see my screen? Does it come up for you?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Great. Let me get everything ready. Perfect. Thank you all so much for the opportunity to talk to you today about the mini adventures of bees. And they're mini because they're many and also because they're tiny little bees. My name is Olivia Carril. I live in New Mexico and I have been studying bees for over 25 years, all around the world. Although I have not been to Indonesia, and I can't wait to come and see the bees that are there because they're amazing. I hope to convince you tonight of how incredible the bees in your region are. So I've collected bees in a lot of different environments. I started when I was 19 years old in a national park in California, which is a state here in the United States. And I have been addicted to collecting bees ever since. I find that there are many, many questions to answer, and I still have a lot that I want to know about bees and a lot to learn. In addition to doing research on bees, where I try and learn what bees live in what environments, I also have been lucky enough to have the opportunity to write books on several different areas of bees. I wrote a book called The Bees in Your Backyard, and then I wrote a book called The Common Bees of Eastern North America. And then recently, this book comes out in May, a book called Common Bees of Western North America. I think it's important for people to know about bees because bees are at the foundation, at the base of nearly every food chain around the world. I want to show you this slide because if later on, after our talk is over and it's in the evening and you suddenly think of a question about bees that you wanted to answer, an answer to, and you didn't get to ask it, please reach out to me. You can email me at thebeesinyourbackyard@gmail.com, and I would be happy to answer any questions that you have that you don't ask today. I guess it's morning for you. And you can also follow us on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram. We like to post interesting facts about bees. And we'll never run out. There are so many interesting things to say about bees. So I want to start with a quiz because every Saturday morning should start with a quiz, right? So my first question for you is, how many bee species are there in the world? So take a moment, and here's your question. Go ahead and try and answer the question. How many bee species do you think there are around the whole world? Your options are 50 bee species, 100 bee species, 1,850, 20,000, or 50,000. How many bee species?
Oke, teman-teman mungkin sudah keluar nih Zoom polls-nya. Boleh banget untuk langsung diisi ya, teman-teman.
Okay, it looks like people have stopped answering, so I will now show you what the answer is. It looks like a few people said there were maybe 50 bee species. Some people say 1,850. About half of you said 20,000, which is the correct answer. Good job. Pat yourself on the back. You did good. Or 50,000 bee species. Many people think that there aren't a lot of different kinds of bees around the world and that there's somewhere around 50. But when you look at all of the different countries of the world and all of the very unique bees that occur in each, the number quickly adds up to well more than 20,000 species. And it's possible there may be close to 30,000 species. There are many new species of bees that are being discovered all the time. Okay, here's our next question. So which one of these is actually a bee? And we're going to do this as a yes, no, I think, right? We decided on yes, no. So we're going to go through these one at a time. When I show you the picture, I want you to tell me if it is yes or no. So picture number one, is this a bee or not a bee? Which of these are bees? Let's start with number one. If it's a bee, put a thumbs up or a yes. If it's a bee, a yes.
Apa?
Okay, now let's do number two. Is number two on here a bee or not a bee? If it's a bee, yes. If not a bee, no. Good. Okay, now we'll do number three. Is number three a bee or not a bee? Yes or no? Some people are thinking, they're taking their time. How about number four? Is number four a bee or not a bee? Yes or no? Some are easy, some are very easy, and some of these are a little harder. I see some no's, I see a couple yeses. Looks like half and half. Half and half. How about number 5? Number 5, is that a B? Yes or no? No, I see lots more no's on this one. I hope you know that's not a B. Number 6. Number 6, a B or not a B? Some yeses. There are some people switching from no to yes for this one. Good. How about number 7? Is number 7 a B? With 20,000 different kinds of bees, it might be hard to tell which of these things are bees and which ones are something else, something else. Number 8 should be easy for you in Indonesia. You should know this one very well. Is that a B or not a B? Good. I see lots of correct answers on that one. How about number 9? Number 9 looks a little different. Is that a B or not a B? Yes or no? I see some yeses. I see some puzzled faces. People are thinking, I don't know. Good. And last one, number 10, a B or not a B? Is that a B? I see some yeses coming. Some people are going to wait until I give the answer. Good job, you guys. That was great. And I think on the whole, most of you are dialed into what a bee is. So here are the correct answers. Number 2 is a bee. It's a bumblebee. You have a few species of bumblebee near you, but not actually in Indonesia. So that can be a little tricky. Number 4 is a sweat bee. You have sweat bees where you live. That one is a bee. Number 6 is a mining bee. You have some kinds of mining bees there. Number 7 is a mason bee. And number 10 is another kind of sweat bee, a different species of sweat bee. Good. Okay, last question. Hopefully this one will be an easier question for you. So this question is, on a scale of 1 to 5, with 1 being not important at all and 5 being very important, how important do you think bees are? Now, I think the best way to do this, if you have your screen on, is just to hold up your hand. You can show me on your hand. Is it a 1? They're not very important, or 5? They're very important, or maybe something in between. Is it a 3? What is it? I see 5. I see 5. I see lots of hands up. I see lots of 5s. Put the hands up. Peer pressure, right? 5, 5, 5. Good. Yes. With the 5 with the hand. That's great. Well done. 2 hands. I see 2 5s together. Excellent. I think bees on a scale of 1 to 5 are very important, and I think I can make an argument to convince you all that they are. So let's walk through the reasons why bees are important. The first reason is that they are at the foundation, at the very base of every food chain around the world. I'm not talking the human food chain. I'm talking about the things that all of the animals on the planet eat. So if we didn't have flowering plants, the majority of which are pollinated by insects, and the majority of the insects that pollinate them are bees, without that particular aspect, the base of the food chain, the things that feed all of the herbivores and then all of the predators above that, would go away. It's very hard to maintain an ecosystem without pollinators to make sure that seeds set and fruits happen every single year. This, of course, applies to us humans as well. Many of the things that we love to eat, that we enjoy very much, rely on pollinators, including many, many bees, in order to exist. You know, apples, cucumbers, pears, green peppers, these things would exist without bees, but they would be much more expensive because not as many of them would exist. We make more fruits when there are more bees around to help with the pollination. We get better seed set. So to really make this point clear, I want you to take a little quiz. And I know some of you might not be able to do this. That's okay. Those of you that can participate, please go right now to menti.com. You can turn off your screen for this, just run it in the background, and type in the code 2975-7756. I'll pull up the screen here. And the question is, what did you eat yesterday? So you should have a word cloud in front of you. It looks something like this. You can take, do you see the word cloud? It shows up, right? Yes, thumbs up. Okay, good. You can type on this screen. Tell me what it is that you ate yesterday. Did you have rice? Did you have bananas? Did you have Kellogg's cereal? Did you have pecan pie? What is it that you ate yesterday? Put in some of the things that you ate, and let's see what of those things are pollinated by bees. So take a moment, no rush. Open up menti.com and use the code 2975-7756. I can put it in the chat if that's helpful at all for folks. Let's see. You can click that link if it will help you. Oops, that I went to just one person. Let's send it to everyone. There. Noodles, excellent, delicious. Bread, of course. I had noodles yesterday too. Cucumbers, potatoes, milk, oranges, salad, soup, grapes. That sounds really tasty right now. I could eat some grapes. Oranges, excellent. We can see as this list grows that some of these things are very obviously bee pollinated. Pretty much when we're thinking about our diet and what we eat, the things that are colorful, that are green or orange or red, those things are by and large pollinated by bees. Noodles, depending on what kind of noodle it is, probably is pollinated by wind. Wind moves those things around, but the stuff that gives the flavor to our food all comes from bee pollinated plants. So we see on here also milk. Believe it or not, milk comes from dairy cows. Dairy cows, I'm thinking cow milk. Dairy cows require alfalfa, and alfalfa sets seeds only when bees pollinate it. So even milk, even ice cream, even all of the things that we enjoy that come from milk require our bee pollinators. I see watermelon on here. That's a very good one. Sauteed vegetables sounds delicious. Also bee pollinated. The bananas help, grapes can help with the pollination, or the bees can help with the pollination of that. Anything that's in a soup that makes it flavorful. These are all bee pollinated things. Very good, you guys. Okay, I'm going to go back to my slide here. We'll go forward one. So if we look at studies that have actually looked at bees around the world and what they do for us, we find that about 75% of the world's crop species depend on pollination. They need something other than wind to pollinate them. So that's kind of interesting to think about. Things like cereals being wheat, maize, rice, barley, oats, those things, they don't really require bees. That's okay. Things like oranges, tomatoes in my region of the world actually do require pollinators a little more than in some other areas. But then a lot of the fruits that we eat, including those watermelons, you can't get them without a bee to visit them to do some pollinating. What's interesting to think about is if we think about this in terms of the tons that's provided, right? Bread, rice, those sorts of things make up the bulk of our diet, and then the bees drop to about 35% of what we actually eat. We probably should all eat more vegetables and change that a little bit. All right, so we've talked about bees, but we haven't really discussed and described what exactly a bee is. So I want to take a moment and go over how we recognize a bee. I think you are all familiar with the one in the upper corner here. This is the honeybee, but there are many other kinds of bees in the world, including things like carpenter bees. You have many carpenter bees where you are that are very interesting. longhorned bees, sweat bees, bumblebees, mason bees. These are all different kinds of bees that occur in the world. And so the question really is, what is it that unites all of these together in a group that we can call bees? When you stop and think about it, the honeybee doesn't look much like some of these other bees. They all look a little different from each other. So why do we put them in one group together and call them bees? What is it that unites them? Well, the way scientists tend to do this is by looking at family trees and how related different organisms are to each other. So if we look at the family tree for all insects in the world, we find that bees and wasps and ants are together in this little branch of the tree called Hymenoptera. They are all together in this group called Hymenoptera. And if we zoom in on just that particular branch so that we can see all of the little twigs on that branch, we see that bees are deeply nested inside a wasp family tree. So the wasp came first, and one of those wasps somehow changed to become what we call bees today. Right down here at the bottom, deep inside the wasp family tree, we find the bees, which means technically, if you think about this, bees are a kind of wasp. They are wasps. We often think of them as separate, and they are separate in terms of their diet and their life history and all of those things. But in terms of who they're related to, they are a wasp. They can't really get away from that. So how in the world could that possibly have happened? How would we get from something that is a wasp? Wasps are predators. They eat other insects. They kill insects and bring them back to the nest in order to feed to their babies. How do we go from a predator like that to something so sweet and adorable and essential for pollination like a bee? We'll never know for sure, but we can kind of guess on this by looking back in time. We know that the first flowering plants in the world probably occurred about the same time that dinosaurs were roaming the earth. So the first flowering plants probably looked something like this. They were very large flowers. In the center was a nice ball of pollen all together, and it provided a great landing platform for insects like grasshoppers or crickets to rest, to stop to rest, maybe to look for a mate. And while they were resting there, it gave predators like wasps a chance to land and catch one of those insects that had stopped to rest on the flower. And the thought is that somewhere in that process, one of those wasps developed a taste for the pollen that was on the body of the prey instead of the prey itself. And what's really amazing about this is that by specializing, by developing a taste for the pollen on the insect that it was preying on, they were eating something that no other insect on the planet was eating. So there was no competition, which made it really easy for them to diversify and radiate and speciate around the world. So that by about 100 million years ago, we see in the fossil record many, many bees showing up as fossils. And we know that they're bees because they have specialized hairs for collecting pollen. They clearly prefer that over catching prey like wasps used to. So by about 64 million years ago, bees and flowers had co-radiated around the world. We had lots of different kinds, and they were no longer a wasp. A lot of the times when we think about bees, we tend to think of this guy right here, one of my favorite characters to tell my children about. His name is Winnie the Pooh, and Winnie the Pooh was always trying to get honey away from the bees. Now, here's the funny part about Winnie the Pooh. The guy who made these cartoons didn't realize how accurate he was being, because this is actually a wasp nest. That's not a bee nest. So this kind of hones in on the idea that bees are technically wasps, even though we kind of got it wrong in our cartoons. It does hammer home the point. So let me walk you through all of the body parts that we find on one of these amazing creatures. Bees may seem kind of standard and normal and like there's not much going on, but there is a lot of really interesting stuff on a bee. So a bee body is made up of 3 body parts: a head, a head, you can kind of see that part on one end, and then a thorax, that's in the middle, and then the abdomen. The head is where all of the sensory organs are. So this is where the mouth parts are, the eyes are located here, and the antenna. And I'll talk about each of those in more detail. Bees also have 6 legs. All of the legs and the wings occur on one body part called the thorax. And then the abdomen down there on the end is where mostly the breathing, a little bit of digestion, and reproduction happens. So if we look at just the head, what's really cool about these guys is that they have not 2 eyes like we do. They have 5 eyes, 5 eyes, 2 on the sides, and the eyes on the side can see 270 degrees all the way around their head. They can also see many different colors. And on the top of their head, they have 3 extra eyes that they use to find their way home, to orient on a landscape, and to find different flower patches. So the 2 eyes on the sides of the head that are kind of big, we call those compound eyes. And the compound eyes can see not only colors like we see, but actually colors that our eyes can't see. So while we see the colors red through purple, bees see a similar range, but it's shifted down so that they see the colors orange through ultraviolet. Ultraviolet is a color that our eyes don't pick up on. So to show you the difference, this is how we perceive a flower, and this is how a bee would perceive that exact same flower. So the ultraviolet reflectance kind of looks like arrows pointing to the center, pointing the bee towards where the pollen is so that they can be good pollinators. Here's another flower. Again, this is how we see it. And with the ultraviolet reflectance, the bee sees it more like this. Kind of cool. In addition to the eyes on their head, they also have antenna that they use to smell. Their antenna is the equivalent of our nose, and they use it to smell all of the different floral volatiles, and odors that are coming through the air. This helps them find flowers when they're flying around in the middle of nowhere. Males actually have an additional segment in their antenna that we think they use to smell out and find females. So the males actually use their antenna not only to find flowers, but also to find a mate. On their back legs, bees are amazing in that they have what are called scopal hairs. It's kind of a fancy word. Scopa actually means broom. You can think of it as the broom that you would sweep your house with. And the broom, just as it collects dust in your house, collects pollen on the back legs of bees. So they take all of the pollen that they gather off of their body and they shove it into these special grocery bags. You can think of it like grocery bags to take back home, where they take all of the pollen off of their legs and leave it in a pile for their babies, for their offspring to eat. So the pollen that they collect from flowers isn't for them, it's actually for their offspring. They have amazing wings that allow them to fly not only up and down and side to side, but sideways in this direction and even upside down, and lets them hang below flowers. And on the front of their face, they have what we call mandibles. Mandibles are incredible in that they act like the thumbs that humans have and help bees to pick up pebbles and twigs and bits of mud and pollen and other baby bees, and all of the things that a bee would need to do with hands, they do with these scissors attached to their face. On the back, of course, bees have a sting. Not all bees are able to sting. In fact, only female bees can sting. The sting is a modified ovipositor, which is a fancy word that means egg layer. So since females are the ones that lay the eggs, females are the ones that have the sting. Male bees, you can hold them in your hand. They won't sting you. There are many, many kinds of bees that have a sting, but the sting is unable to penetrate human skin. So even though they technically could sting, they can't sting humans, and we're safe from them. And then finally, on the very front of the face, this is very important. They have a very special tongue. Their tongue can actually break apart into 2 pieces or fold back together. I don't know, do you guys know transformers? Do you know how they fold? They fold and they unfold, right? The bee mouth parts do the same thing. They fold and they unfold in all sorts of different ways to do whatever it is that they need to do. So the mouth parts allow them to paint the walls inside their nest. They allow them to taste different flowers. They allow them to sop up materials. All sorts of amazing things can be done with the mouth parts on one of these bees. Pretty incredible. And then if we want to talk about those legs, they're kind of incredible. I mean, a leg is a leg, right? It seems like it should be boring. But on a bee, they have built-in knee pads. They don't have to put knee pads on if they need them. They're always there, built into their body. They have extra little clamps on their front legs that they can use to grab their antenna and scrape the antenna. So it's almost like how we blow our nose to clean it so we can smell. They scrape their antenna clean, and it's how they make sure they can keep smelling things. And some bees have extra pads on the bottoms of their feet that they use to land on water and float, so they can actually stand on the top of water. So I told you this already. We took a quiz, so you already know the answer. We think around the world there's somewhere between 20 and 30,000 different species. We think in Indonesia, based on all records to date, that there's roughly 550 species. But chances are good there are some bees in Indonesia that haven't been discovered yet, and the number of true species there is probably higher than this. So let's compare Indonesia to the rest of the world. If we look around the world at different regions, we find that in general, countries that have hot, dry desert environments tend to be very species rich. We find lots and lots of bees in places like South Africa, Brazil, Mexico, the Southwest United States, Australia, and then deserts in Southeast Asia and the Mediterranean in Europe. Those are areas that tend to have a lot of bees. So if you want to see monkeys, if you want to see beetles, if you want to see butterflies, if you want to see birds, all of those things, you go to the tropics, you go to Indonesia. That's where those things reach their greatest diversity. If you want to see bees, you head to dry, barren deserts. That's where bees reach their greatest diversity. Very strange. They're kind of odd like that. So I want to introduce you to some of the bees that can be found where you live. These are kind of amazing creatures. You have some of the most unique bee species that I know of on the planet, which is kind of incredible. So this one here is called the sugar bag bee. It pollinates an orchid species. Let's see if I can get it to pull up here. Hang on. There, it pollinates this beautiful orchid species. But what's fascinating is it also pollinates something called a cycad, which is very strange for bees to do. Bees don't often pollinate things in the cycad group. In fact, I would hazard a guess that no insect on the planet, except for bees, pollinates the cycad, and they only do it where you live. Around the world, this is a very unique relationship. What's really cool is this bee lives in little hives, and inside the hive, they often have enemies, as everybody does. The enemies of these guys are called hive beetles. They look like this. And when the hive beetle comes into the nest and the bee finds it, instead of like grabbing it and wrestling it out, they mummify it like an Egyptian mummy. They take the beetle and they wrap it in mud and they wrap it in honey and make it so the thing can't move, and it's frozen inside their nest, and then they leave it there. So that's how they handle that horrible creature that sneaks into their nest. You guys also have the largest bee in the entire world. It occurs only in Indonesia, and you are so lucky to have this thing. It is huge. It's 2.5 inches long. So you can think about that. I think that's 60 some odd centimeters long. It's very big. I can only imagine what it sounds like to hear it flying through the air. The females of this species are bigger than the male, about twice as big as the male. It's important to point out how big this is. This is actually bigger than the smallest bird in the entire world. So this is bigger than some bird species. What's really great about this is that for many years it was thought to be extinct. It hadn't been seen for a long time. And then around 2018, maybe 2019, it was discovered again, and it's only known from 3 islands. You guys could probably say these names better than me, but I'm going to try. Don't hate me. Bakan? Did I do okay? Okay. Halmahera, Halmahera. Okay. And Tidore?
Tidore,
Am I
yes,
close?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Those are the places where it's been found before. And on those places, it appears that they live in termite mounds in nests with all of the sisters living together. Multiple individuals work together and they use resin, sort of like the sap on a tree, and their giant mandibles to grab that and build the nest in there, which is kind of amazing. This is the blue banded bee. What's really cool about this is that it's common in cities. So, you know, some of these things you have to go to very remote places without many people to see them. This one you can see in a lot of cities, and they're big and bold and very easy to find. They nest in burrows in the clay soil or in soft sandstone. And that blue banded bee, this is a fascinating thing to think about, actually has a parasite that is another bee. So if you think of a parasite, maybe it's something that sucks your blood, right? This is different. This is very different from that. This bee that you're looking at right here sneaks into the nest of the blue banded bee when she's not at home, when she's out foraging for pollen or nectar, visiting flowers. Flowers, hang on, wait, I know how to say flowers. Bunga? Bunga. Okay. And when she's out visiting those flowers, this bee will sneak into her nest and leave an egg where she can't find it. And then she flies away real quick before anyone notices that she's been in there. And when the host mom comes home, she finishes preparing a beautiful meal of pollen for her babies and then seals the nest off and leaves, not knowing there's an intruder. And when this baby hatches, the little egg hatches into a big caterpillar. Bees have caterpillars as babies, just like butterflies do. And the caterpillar has giant mandibles, giant teeth on the front of it that it uses to chop the other bee in half. And then it eats the pollen that was left in the nest. So they're a little evil. They're also beautiful. All right. And then, of course, you have these. This is incredible. You guys have tiny little bees that will actually drink tears from humans, from cows, from lots of other animals. They'll land on your eyelids and drink your tears. This does not occur anywhere else in the world, so it's pretty special. Where I live, and this is different from where you are, I live in the southwest deserts of the United States, and most of the bees here are solitary. Did anyone who has seen the movie Thor? Did the movie Thor come out where you are? Did you see this movie? You know Thor?
Not yet.
No, Thor? It was 10 years ago.
Oh no, the new one. I'm not
Oh,
I'm
there's
not
a
watching
new
it
one.
yet.
No, the
Yeah.
old one, the very first one. It was filmed in New Mexico, so you can imagine it's dry, it's very deserty. There's lots of small shrubs and cactus, no jungles, nothing like that. Where I live, the bees that live here are all solitary. So each female builds her own nest. She usually digs it out of the ground. She digs a hole in the ground, and inside that nest, she lays eggs. So she acts as both a queen and a worker in that she builds the nest, but also lays the eggs. She does both. And then she goes out and she gathers pollen and nectar that she brings back to the nest to provide for those offspring. So she lives alone, she works alone, she does all of these things. The only social bee that we have in the United States, something that lives in a hive that makes honey and all of those things, is the honeybee, which you guys know way better than we do because it's native to where you are. You actually have many species of honeybees. You have many species of social bees, which is kind of amazing. I want to say it's close to 50 species of social bees in the Indonesian region, whereas we have one. And the honeybee is not native to where I live. It was brought over 400 years ago and is heavily managed here, but it is not a wild bee, whereas your wild bees are social. It's really cool. So all of that said, now we've talked about all of these different kinds of bees, but we haven't talked about how to recognize a bee. How do we know when what we see is actually a bee? So here's another quiz for you. And this one's simple enough. I think if you wanted to, we could do this with a finger. You could hold up a finger if you wanted. So here's the question. I have 10 pictures here. I want you to tell me how many of these are bees. So if all 10 of these are bees, hold up 10 fingers. If 5 of them are bees, hold up 5 fingers. Look very closely at all of these pictures and tell me how many are bees. If you think I am tricking you and that none of these are bees, put up a fist like this. None of these are bees. 0 bees. You tell me how many are bees. I'll give you a second. Look closely. I'm seeing good. I've got a hand with 5. I've got a 1 here. Here's a 1. Someone's saying 1. Someone said 5. Who else? We've got a chat. I think someone's putting in the chat. If it's hard to hold up a finger, if you don't want to turn your screen on, you're welcome to put it in the chat. I see 6 here. Someone says 6. I see someone go, I don't know. This is hard. 5 bees, very good. Let's see. 2, I see 2. Excellent. Good. Okay, I'm going to show you the answer now. The answer is 1. There is 1 bee. All of these other things are not bees. Even though they look a little like bees, they're not bees. And so let me tell you the reason why they have that bee-like look. Bees happen to be this creature that has a sting that could potentially hurt you. And because of that, a lot of other creatures have evolved the ability to look like a bee in order to mimic the idea that if you were to eat that thing, you might get stung. So looking like a bee gives an insect a chance to get away because the predator will pause long enough to do a double take. And during that time, the insect can escape. So it's quite common to have these other things mimic the look of a bee. There are ways to tell the difference though. So I want to walk you through this. And the main group that tends to imitate and look a little bit like the bees are things in the fly family. So look at these 2 images for just a second. And in your mind, build sort of a mental list. Tell me what, in your head, I want you to start thinking about differences you see between the bee and the fly. And I already circled the bee for you on the last page. So you should know that the bee is the one down in the lower left corner. The fly is in the upper right. So what differences do you see? Okay, now you get a chance to check yourself and see if you noticed all of the differences. Do you feel like you're in maybe elementary school again, back at the beginning of your school? You had to find the differences? Okay, here we go. So some of the big differences between them are that bees tend to be hairier. They tend to have more hair on their body. And the reason for that is because the hair helps them to collect pollen off of flowers. What's really interesting is that as a bee flies through the air, it actually builds up a static charge, static electricity, like what gives you the shock when you're walking in your house. Static electricity builds up in the hair on the bee, and when the bee lands on a flower, the pollen from the flower is attracted to the bee's body and literally sucked onto it like a magnet. So the hair helps it to gather pollen. So they tend to be hairy, and they especially have these thick pollen collecting hairs on the back legs. They have smaller eyes than flies do, and the eyes tend to be separated, so there's a little forehead in between, whereas on the fly, the 2 eyes kind of come together and almost touch on the top of the head. Flies tend to have really short little antennae that come out of the center of the face like this. So if we had been studying flies, Nikita, in all of those pictures that we took beforehand, instead of doing this, we would have done this. We put our fingers down there. Yes. They have big eyes. They have very short little antenna, no pollen collecting hairs, and flies are all together in a group of insects that have 2 wings, whereas bees, like butterflies and beetles and lots of other things, have 4 wings. So those are the big differences. And I know you are all taking notes, so you're all ready to take a quiz. This will be an easy quiz in that all you have to say is yes or no, just like we did before. This will be a yes or a no. You can put the little green yes or no in the upper corner. So here we go. Is this a bee or a fly? If it is a bee, please put a yes. Give me a yes checkbox. If it's a fly, go with no, a no checkbox. Is it a bee or a fly? I see we have a little one who's joined us, and I know she's going to do very well on this quiz. Good job. Good job. I've got some yeses. That's it. I don't have any no's. Awesome. You guys are good students. This is true. This one is a B. Very good. Very good. And you can tell it's a B because you have the long antenna. It's very hairy. And you can't quite see, but there are 2 sets of wings there for a total of 4. Okay, here we go with the next one. Get ready. Is this a bee or a fly? If it's a fly, give me a no. If it's a bee, give me a yes. Is it a bee? Yes. Fly? No. Oh my gosh, those no's came fast. Woo! You guys are good. The best students I've had all day. Did I tell you I teach middle school? I teach 11, 12, and 13-year-olds.
Yeah, you did.
You guys do a little better than they did today. What about this one? That was definitely a fly. Very good. What about this one? Is this a fly or is this a bee? If it's a fly, again, give me a no. If it's a bee, give me a yes. Fly is no, bee is yes. We're still thinking. I see some thinking happening. Very good. This is a fly. This one's a fly. It is not a bee. No bee. And you can tell because those antennae are teeny tiny. They don't extend out from the face. Can you see how the eyes on the top touch? The 2 eyes actually touch on the top of the head. And then the wings, there's only 1 wing right here. 1 wing on either side for 2 wings total. What about this? If it's a bee, give me a yes. If it's a fly, give me a no. Bee, yes, fly, no. And if it's a bee, yes. If it's a fly, give me a no. Okay, good. Oops, I went forward. I gave you a sneak peek. Oh, I got mixed answers on this one. This one is confusing people. So the thing to look at on this one is there's pollen on the back legs. There's a lot of pollen on the body, which means it's been collecting pollen. And those antennae on the face are really long, really long. So that tells me this is a bee. Even though the wings look like there's only 1 wing on either side because of the way they're folded, if it were to open its wings, there's actually 2. But those antennas should clue you in. This one is a bee. Okay, what about this one? We're getting check marks. Yes for B. I'm seeing lots of yes marks for B. I see a few no's. See some no's. This one it's a fly. It looks so much like a bee. What a good mimic, huh? But look at the antenna. They're so tiny. Let's go back. Let's look at that bee. Here's the bee antenna. They're really long. Here's the fly antenna. They're really short. That's one of the big differences. And these eyes are huge. Those are really big eyes. Flies have big eyes and 2 wings. Okay, good. What about this one? Bee or fly? Bee, yes. Give me a green check for yes for bee. Give me a no would be a red X if you think it's a fly. If it's a fly, give me a red X. See, I'm seeing so many green check marks. Very good. This one is a bee, most definitely. It's one of my favorite bees. They fly really, really fast, so it's hard to get a good look at them, but when they stop, they're really beautiful. So you can see lots and lots of hair. The antennae are hidden because she's actually using them to smell the flower. She has both of them aimed down at the flower and is smelling it, so it's a little harder, but it's super fuzzy, and you can see all of the pollen that she's collected on her hind legs, which you'll never see on a fly. Okay, good. So now you have a little bit of an understanding of how to tell bees and flies apart. You know how bees appeared on Earth, and you know how diverse and incredible they are and how many different kinds we have. So the last thing I want to talk to you about today is how our bees are doing. So quite often when you hear about bees, you hear about them because we're worried that they're in decline, that our pollinators are in peril, and that maybe they're going away. And what would our life be like if they went away? How would this change society for us? And the truth of the matter is we don't really know a lot about how bees are doing. We haven't done much research. If we're still finding new species, it's really hard to say for sure how anything is doing because we're still making new discoveries. So if you think about it, if you haven't ever sampled an area and you go out and you collect 10 individuals of one species, but you've never collected in that area before, you don't know if 10 individuals means that there are more than there were in the past or less than there were in the past. And this can be tricky for bee scientists who are trying to help our bees if we don't know whether they're increasing or decreasing. That being said, we know that many of the things that we do on our landscapes and in our backyards and in our cities probably aren't good for bees because we know a little bit about what a bee needs to live. So we have lots of stories that have come out about insects that are in decline, but the truth of the matter is there's a lot of research that still needs to be done in order to understand this. We really can't ever tell with bees. There's Winnie the Pooh again. He just keeps showing up. Likely there are some bees that as we change the environments where they occur will actually increase. We'll have more of them than we've had in the past. And likely there are some that are more sensitive, more vulnerable, and won't do as well as we change their environments. Bees occur, and this is important, in both urban and natural environments, and we need to think about where bees might be most affected by the changes that we make. My guess is that urban environments are the ones where ecosystems are changing the most dramatically. And while we might not know specifics for how they're declining, we do know a few things about what's happening in cities. So here's one of the most interesting things, and I want to make sure and highlight this. One of the things that happens in larger cities especially is that because of all of the asphalt, all of the concrete, all of the concentration of unnatural materials, we tend to find that the ambient air temperatures and the ground temperatures are much higher than we would find in a natural environment that hasn't been built up into a city. And so that extra heat, we often call this a heat island because it's an island of heat around where a natural environment might not have temperatures quite that high. And insects and animals and flowers and all of these things can persist in these hotter environments. It's not like they go away, but we do see changes in their physiology in how they respond to the environment. So as an example of this, a bee's development, how it turns from a baby into an adult, is very much driven by temperature. Where I live, we have winter. We actually have snow that hits the ground and it's very wet and cold and miserable for months on end. And what happens in the spring is as the snow melts and the ground warms, the bees that are in the ground are sensitive to the change in the temperature, and that cues their body to start doing the final stages of development into an adult. So those things happen here. In an area that is a heat island, their bodies are triggered not only to develop earlier in the season than they would have otherwise, but also to develop more quickly, so faster. As they develop faster, they tend to be smaller, so that the bees that we get in cities are smaller than that same species in a natural environment, which may seem like not a big deal, but when you think about the fact that a bee's size determines how far it can fly for flowers, a smaller bee may experience fragmenting or dividing up of a habitat in a much different way than a large bee. And so what we find is that in city environments, it is the large bees, which should be the stronger and more robust ones. Those are the ones that we see dropping out and declining. Large bees are declining because in city environments, and it's likely because the size of them is changing so that the habitat is no longer suitable for them. Let's see if we can move forward. Pesticides are also a problem, and they tend to be concentrated either in agricultural environments or in cityscapes where we often apply them to keep, our urban areas looking really nice. And this probably isn't good for bees, but when you think about the fact that there are 20,000 different species some of which emerge in the spring, some in the summer, some in the fall. Some come out early in the morning, some come out in the afternoon, some nest in the ground, some nest in twigs. All of these different things might impact their susceptibility to different pesticides. Some might experience pesticides more dramatically than others. And I already mentioned this a little bit, habitat fragmentation in terms of both roads that divide natural areas in half, and also cities where you have maybe a park here, but then no natural environment for quite a ways before you get another natural area. That habitat fragmentation might alter who lives in the bee communities. And this can be exacerbated, especially when we change the habitat by planting non-native flowers or things that maybe aren't so attractive for bees. And then finally, and this is a big deal, especially in areas where climate change appears to happen sooner, what we're finding in high mountain regions in Europe and also in North America and in China, and lots of regions that have really high mountains, where there's a very short window during which everything blooms before it's snowed again. It's all covered in snow again. And because the season is so short in these areas, we often find that the flowers are responding to changes in when it gets warm more quickly than the bees. And so that a bee-flower relationship that used to be perfectly timed together is now out of sync, with the flower blooming before the bee has emerged from the ground. And what this asynchrony, we call it, out of time relationship will do over the long term, we don't really know yet. We're not sure. So all of that being said, it makes us all care about our bees and want to help them. And I think step one to caring and supporting our bees is to learn to recognize them. Now you know how to see them and recognize that they're not flies and see what they are when they occur. They are everywhere. Bees will occur anywhere that they can. They're kind of, think of them as the evil superhero that secretly wants to take over the world. The bees will make it if given half a chance, and they already are. In any natural environment around you, if you look, you'll find that there are bees already there. Once you know that the bee's there, it's actually pretty simple to do a few little things that can help maintain them in that landscape. All that a bee really needs. Do you guys know what, do you have Airbnb there? Airbnb, is this a thing? No? Airbnb, no? Airbnb out here is B and B stands for bed and breakfast. And pretty much it means a hotel. So if you go stay in a hotel, they give you bed and they give you breakfast in the morning. And that's what a bee needs. A bee needs a bed. They need a place to live, whether it's twigs, grasses, vines, weeds, brambles, or a piece of undisturbed soil. Each bee needs something different. And then breakfast, some food, some diverse native vegetation that blooms all season long, so they always have something that they can eat. These are the things that a bee needs, and they're pretty easy to provide once you know the bees are there. So if you want to see native bees in your yard, additional things that you can do include limiting pesticides. The fewer pesticides you spray, the better off the bees will be. Be careful during the season when bees aren't flying around, because if you remove all of the vegetation that they could be nesting in during that time, you've kind of done away with the bees that were there. Think about connecting different habitats, connect parks together with whatever that you can, and know that bees are okay with some disturbance, even a little bit of disturbance, a little bit of unnatural stuff, they're okay with. They can persist through some of the disturbance that occurs when humans are there. So I'm going to stop with that. I would love to take any questions that you might have at all. I'm going to put this up one more time so that if you happen to think of a question that you would like to ask after we're done this morning, feel free to reach out to me. I would be happy to answer your questions. You guys will have to help me interpret questions.
Oh, yes, Dr. Carril. So actually, we have the other session for the question and answer.
Okay.
So are you done with your presentation or not
I am
yet?
done with my presentation.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much for Dr. Carril for the amazing adventure, and that was super insightful, and we believe everyone here gets a lot of new perspective and knowledge about how important bees are. And then there are actually many species of bees of home ground and overseas. What do you think, Arya, about that?
Yeah, it's really cool. I didn't know that there are many kinds of bees out there and the color is so beautiful and
Yeah,
everything. Yeah.
what a splendid journey.
Yes.
Okay, next.
Oke. So, nah teman-teman, gimana tadi pertualangannya? Aku yakin pasti sangat menarik sekali, bukan? Pertualangan kita mengenal lebih jauh tentang lebah bersama Dr. Carril seperti itu. So, dengan penjelasan dari Dr. Carril tadi, semoga kita sebagai generasi muda itu bisa lebih aware dengan keberadaan dan manfaat dari lebah yang ada di sekitar kita. Dan kita juga bisa nih untuk menerapkan apa yang sudah Dr. Carril sampaikan tadi tentang bagaimana cara membudidayakan lebah dengan tujuan penghijauan yang dapat kita mulai dari rumah kita sendiri. Seperti itu.
Oke, setuju banget nih sama Kak Arya. Nah, sekarang kita menuju ke sesi selanjutnya ya teman-teman, yaitu sesi Q&A, di mana yang udah kita tunggu banget nih, di mana kita bisa berinteraksi dan juga berdiskusi langsung dengan Dr. Carril. Oke,
Ya,
mungkin untuk Abian bisa dibantu untuk menginterpretasikannya.
oh ya, tapi
baik.
sebentar, mohon maaf. Ya, jadi sedikit mengingatkan nih untuk teman-teman yang sudah hadir di sini untuk dapat mengisi presensi ya teman-teman yang sudah dikirimkan melalui
Oh
chat
iya,
box.
tentu.
Ya, mungkin bisa dikirimkan lagi kepada panitia supaya teman-teman bisa mengisi presensi tersebut. Seperti itu, untuk mendapatkan e-certificate dan lain-lain.
Asik.
Oke, ya. Abian,
Oke,
are you
baik.
ready?
I'm ready.
Oke.
Makasih Karya, Kak Katia. Selamat pagi teman-teman semua. Perkenalkan saya Abian, moderator yang akan memandu sesi pertanyaan kita hari ini. Saya akan membantu menerjemahkan bahasa Indonesia dalam bahasa Inggris dan sebaliknya. Jadi pertama-tama aku mau bacain peraturannya lagi. Itu yang pertama, jika ada pertanyaan yang diajukan dalam bahasa Inggris, kalian bisa langsung raise hand aja. Nanti akan dipersilakan oleh moderator dan akan bertanya langsung kepada Dr. Carril. Dan yang kedua, jika pertanyaan diajukan dalam bahasa Indonesia, silakan tulis dulu di kolom Q&A. Nanti aku bisa bantu interpretasikan kepada Dr. Carril. Ya, itu aja kayaknya. Baiklah teman-teman semua, sesi pertanyaan akan saya buka. Silakan raise hand atau ajukan pertanyaan melalui kolom Q&A. Terima kasih. Oh, nih ada Ica Afrianti. Boleh dipersilakan.
Hello. Good morning, Olivia. Good morning, friends from UGM.
Morning.
I have two questions. So I'm going to say straightly in English. My first question is, as a lay people, what can we do to preserve bees around us, especially for us who live in the cities, in an urban setting, where it's so hard to find flowers and trees, and what kind of small effort we can do to preserve bees. And the second question is, please correct me if I'm wrong because I'm not a scientist. In our area, Indonesia, are we in the southern hemisphere? If it is in the southern hemisphere, when is the off season or on season for bees? Is it correct, the terminology of an on season? I don't know, but I'm just curious about the season. Is there any specific time when bees are coming to several areas, something like that? Okay,
Those are really good questions. Thank you for both of those. So I'm going to answer your second one first. Because you live in a rather tropical environment, your seasons are different in that they're more determined by the amount of precipitation. So during times when there is a lot of rain, that is an off season for bees. They don't do well when it's really rainy. Does that make sense? During dry seasons, times of year when it's dry, you're going to find more bees. The bees will actually be doing more activity during dry seasons.
So they thrive during dry season. Summer?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Yes. Very good. And for your first question, it can be hard when you're in a city and you're the only one that is really wanting to do anything for your bees because you're all alone in your efforts. And it can be hard to think that putting out a plant or doing something in a city environment can have any impact. So in those cases, I would say what you can do that is important is more about community, taking what you know about bees and sharing it with many people, because then you can get more people who are thinking the same way that you are. And then that's how a movement grows. That's how you make those changes. The other thing that you can do is support things that support bees in non-urban environments. So if you can't do much where you are to make the bees better, you can support and make choices that will help bees in areas where they are doing well, where they are occurring. Which in your area, I don't know for sure, but it might include things like national parks, places like that where bees are already protected, and you might be able to help them in that way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's kind of hard, but that makes sense.
Is.
One more thing,
Yes.
my daughter is a big fan of bees and she likes honey. She wants to ask some questions. Go ahead.
How can bees make honeys?
Oh, that's such a good question.
How can they be so sticky?
How are the bees sticky?
Yeah.
Bees stay so not sticky. They're so good at not getting sticky. It's kind of crazy how clean they stay. We get sticky. The bees don't get sticky. No, so here's the strange part about bees making honey, and all bees do it different. So this is just sort of the general idea. They visit flowers and they suck up a whole bunch of nectar. Nectar is like sugar water inside the flowers. So they suck it up like through a straw and they hold it inside their body. And when they get back to the nest, they spit it back out. It's almost like throwing up. They throw it back up. And once they've done that, then they evaporate the water out of it. They heat the nectar up and evaporate the water. And that combined with the bacteria and stuff that was inside them when they threw it back up, those things together crystallize the sugar that's left behind and create the honey. So is it do you guys, when you go to the store, can you buy pineapple in a can or peaches in a can, or I don't know, something in a can, canned fruits and vegetables? So honey, you can think of as canned food. They take the flowers and they preserve it the same way that we preserve fruits and vegetables. They preserve the nectar from flowers so that they can eat it later. When the flower isn't there anymore, they can still eat from the flower. It's very similar to creating a pantry. You have a pantry in your house and bees make a pantry, and in their pantry is all honey. That's what they eat.
Thank you.
Terima kasih Mbak Ica sudah menjawab. Ada lagi yang bisa, ada yang lagi mau bertanya? So while waiting for another person to ask a question, so here's from the Q&A section. Miss Ida Mewati asked Dr. C, what is the role of bees in improving the ecosystem in which they live? And the second question is, what is the effect of climate change on the survival of bees?
Great questions. And I think I'll start with the second one first again. The truth is that we don't know a lot about bees and climate change. So most of what we do is guess how it might affect them in the future. This can be a little tricky, and sometimes our predictions are wrong. But generally what we think will happen is that as the climate changes, we think that there are areas where it's going to get wetter. Wetter areas will become wetter and drier areas will become drier. So the wetter areas may become more difficult for bees to persist in. They tend not to do well in super wet environments. In the drier and hotter places, we think that their bee size the size of a bee will continue to decrease, and that might change how they interact with their environment. And we think that at higher elevations, they may no longer be in sync, matched up with the flowers that they visit. So it may alter which flowers get the best pollination and what food sources are available for the bees. This could mean that there's more competition for floral resources, so more bees trying to use the same flowers, and that could lead to decreased bee populations as they compete. It could also mean that many of the word is pathogens. Do you know this word? Bacteria, viruses, things that make bees and humans sick. So the things that make bees and humans sick may become more common or may persist better in a climate changed world. And so bees may be more susceptible to diseases as the Earth's climate changes. So those are the things we think might happen, but we don't know for sure which one or how dramatic it will be when they happen. So the other question about how can bees change the ecosystems in which they occur? Bees are responsible for something like 70% of animal pollination. So not all plants are pollinated by animals. Animals includes insects, it includes honey possums and bats and birds and all of these things. But within that, bees make up the majority of the pollination. So the way that they most structure an ecosystem, I mean, other than the fact that sometimes birds eat them and they provide a food source, is that they keep the seeds occurring every year. They allow plants to reseed themselves and continue to be in an area. So if bees go away, the plants have to change how they get pollinated, and that changes an ecosystem pretty dramatically.
Thank you, Dr. Carril. So, tadi Dr. Carril ngomong bahwa untuk yang dampak pengaruh perubahan iklim terhadap keberlangsungan lebah, yaitu ya jika nanti kalau nggak ada lebah, tumbuhan-tumbuhan di sana dia harus mengganti yang tadinya harusnya dipollinate oleh lebah, jadinya harus dipollinate oleh something else like yang lain seperti angin dan lain-lain. Dan untuk kembali ke itu tadi untuk ekosistem, dan untuk yang keberlangsungan terhadap ekosistem itu ya because karena lebah itu pollinate yang tumbuhannya, jadi bisa membantu untuk tanaman-tanaman lebih hidup dan berubah dan mengurangi efek climate change itu sendiri. And thank you, Dr. Carril. Maaf kalau agak tebak-tebakan untuk translation-nya. For the next questions, there's a question from Agus Purnomo. It stated that in my house, there's a nest of Indas wasp, Vespa amphinis, if I said that correctly. And as far as I know, this wasp is a type of predator. Is it true that this type of wasp is harmful or not? That's the question.
And it's near his house?
Yeah, he said that.
Yes, so wasps that nest in groups together tend to be harmful because they have to protect their colony. So they tend to be more aggressive. If I had one near my house, I would probably move it too. I wouldn't want it there. I would get rid of it. I hate saying that because I actually really admire wasps, but they can often be harmful. Vespa especially isn't nice to have. They are predators, and they're actually really good at removing a lot of the insects, the pests that can be near your house. So it's nice to have the wasps nearby to remove pests and keep your house clean in that way. But if you were to bump the nest, they would probably try to get you, and that would be bad. So.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Carril. So, kesimpulannya, kata Dr. Carril, sebaiknya disingkirkan, walaupun emang Dokter Carril tidak suka bahwa tawon itu harus disingkirkan, cuman karena itu membahayakan kita sebagai manusia, jadi lebih baik untuk disingkirkan. Apakah menjawab Bapak Agus? Okay, so for the next questions, it's a question from Prima Anafria Rayani. She asks, is it okay to take honey from beehive? Does this action not harm the bees?
This is yes and no. It can be okay to take honey from a honeybee hive, no problem at all. If you take too much, then the bees have to rebuild and it takes more energy and can make it hard for them to maintain their colony. So you should be careful, but it is okay to take some honey from a beehive. They usually have more than they need.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Carril. So, jadi tadi Dr. Carril ngomong, apakah boleh ngambil madu dari sarang lebah? Jawabannya boleh, tapi dalam batas wajar. Karena kalau ngambil kebanyakan, nanti lebah-lebahnya itu harus membuat lagi sarangnya, dan itu memakan lebih banyak energi. Dan apakah tindakan itu merugikan lebah? Tentunya tidak kalau dalam batas wajar, tapi kalau berlebihan, itu akan merugikan sekali. And so there's another question, Dr. Carril, from Sonia, and it is, so how do you deal with the pain of a bee sting?
It's a good question. For me, do you know aspirin? Do you have aspirin?
Yeah, we have
Do you know this?
aspirin.
Okay. Aspirin for me is the best. If you take just straight like children's aspirin and put it on the bee sting and get it a little wet so that the aspirin tablet dissolves, it tends to take the pain out of the bee sting. For me, that's the best way. When I don't have aspirin, mud will help too with the pain. And then you just wait till it passes. But put the aspirin right on the bee sting. Put it on top of it.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Carril. So, jadi tadi Dr. Carril ngomong kalau disengat oleh lebah, bisa menggunakan obat yang namanya aspirin, dan itu bisa dioleskan aja di tempat yang disengatnya, dan nanti lama-lama bisa membaik. Terima kasih. So, for the last question, it is from Putri Felicia. She said that, I would like to know about the common threats facing bees population and the strategies that can be used to protect and promote the health of bee colonies.
I think the threats that most face bee colonies, so not solitary bees, but the bees that nest together in a colony, the biggest threats are disease, and then poor management of humans, if humans are in charge of it. If they're wild, it's a different story, but disease is a really big problem, and a lack of resources. If there aren't enough resources in an area for them to feed adequately, either because of habitat fragmentation or pesticides or climate change, those are probably the biggest threats. Do you want me to say it again slowly? Did you get it all? That's a lot.
I think I get it. It's just
Okay,
kind of hard
good job.
to translate it. So, thank you, Dr. Carril. Jadi yang diomongin Dr. Carril ialah ancaman-ancaman yang mengancam lebah, itu penyakit yang ke insects, habis itu poor management, manajemen manusia yang buruk dalam mengelola lebahnya, dan of course climate change, dan bisa juga affect lebah-lebah itu. Jadi that's what Dr. Carril said, and maybe we can answer the last question, and one more question is from Meila Faisa. If flowers grow in a fairly toxic area, such as metal polluted, will it affect the honey content?
That's a really great question. So this is something people have researched recently because we're all curious about this. And generally, it seems that unless it's a really, really high level of toxicity, it doesn't transfer to the pollen. So the honey is still safe. So even in a toxic environment, the honey doesn't appear to end up affected by the toxic metals. At pretty normal. If it's really, really high, that might be different. But at normal levels of toxicity, whatever normal is, it's okay.
Oke, thank you Dr. Carril. So, Dr. Carril tadi bilang kalau bunganya hidup di very toxic area, which means daerah yang berpolusi, tapi dalam batas normal itu nggak akan mempengaruhi hasil madu yang dibuat. Tapi kalau misalnya polusinya melebihi batas normal atau mungkin sangat-sangat toxic atau sangat-sangat berbahaya, itu bakal bisa mengefek madu yang dibuat oleh lebah itu sendiri. Terima kasih. So, I think that is all that I can do right now. Aku akan memberikan kembali ke MC-nya, Kak Arya dan Kak Kathleen, dipersilakan.
You are muted, Kathleen.
Okay, thank you very much for the questions. Jadi untuk selanjutnya, pertanyaan selanjutnya nanti akan kami sampaikan kembali. Semoga Dr. Carril nanti bisa menjawab melalui email. Nanti kami akan kirimkan melalui email atau WhatsApp. So Dr. Carril, actually there's still many questions here, but later on maybe you could answer it through WhatsApp group or probably email. Thank you very much. Oke, jadi terima kasih banyak partisipasinya teman-teman semua. Jadinya dengan adanya sesi Q&A ini kita menjadi punya pandangan dan pengetahuannya lebih jauh ya, terlepas dari presentasi yang sudah disampaikan Dr. Carril sebelumnya. Oke, setelah sesi Q&A ini selesai, akan ada apa nih Arya? Ada sesi dokumentasi ya?
Tentunya dong. So, by the end of the Q&A sessions, itu tandanya kita sudah berada hampir di penghujung acara nih teman-teman pada webinar kita pada pagi hari ini. Jadi sepertinya kurang lengkap kalau kita tidak mengabadikan momen nih, Kathleen.
Wah, benar
Nah,
banget.
kita akan ada sesi kenangan. So, Dr. Carril, for now, the session is taking the documentation, the pictures of us. So, untuk teman-teman mungkin bisa untuk dinyalakan kameranya dan menggunakan filter background-nya yang sudah dikirimkan melalui WhatsApp group. Ya,
Yuk,
so that we can
teman-teman.
yes.
Yuk, kita mengambil foto bersama.
Ya. Dan juga kepada panitia mungkin bisa bantu untuk screenshot. Ya. Aman ya?
Oke. Bentar, aku mau.
Oke. Oke, ya. Shall we begin? Ya, mulai ya. Oke, mungkin yang pertama itu gayanya adalah kayak gini, teman-teman.
Antena,
ya. Oke, ya. Kathleen, maybe you can count.
Oke, aku hitung mundur ya. From 3, 2, 1. Sudah? Oke, mau sekali lagi? Atau ganti gaya? Gimana, Ar?
Mungkin peace.
Baik. Oke. Countdown ya. From 3, 2, 1. Oke. Apalagi nih, Ar?
Oke, maybe for the last jempol kali ya. Kayaknya kalau tanpa jempol itu tidak itu apa namanya? Tidak
jos.
Tidak jos. Oke, yuk.
Oke, aku hitung ya. 3, 2, 1. Oke, sudah?
Oke, nice.
Nice. Thank you, everyone. Oke.
Ya. Maybe committee, can you show the screen again?
The next slide, please.
Yeah, the slide 16. Ya, sedikit mengingatkan lagi kepada teman-teman yang belum presensi untuk webinar, silahkan untuk melakukan presensi ya teman-teman, karena nanti akan ada dikirim e-sertifikatnya melalui link tersebut seperti itu. Oke. Ya.
Oke. Baik teman-teman, tibalah kita memasuki penghujung acara. Oke, sekali lagi kami selaku MC mewakili para panitia yang sudah mengerahkan tenaga luar biasanya untuk hari ini. Kami juga berterima kasih kepada seluruh partisipan yang sudah aktif nih dan memeriahkan acara pada pagi hari ini. Tentu tak lupa, big thank you for Dr. Carril for having us today and hope we could meet on another occasion, and we really enjoyed this special media adventure today and that was super fun. Oke. Untuk selanjutnya, Arya mungkin bisa melakukan penutup.
Ya, oh ya, untuk door prize-nya tadi jangan lupa ya teman-teman, bisa banget, ya bisa banget untuk nanti akan di-share lagi di WhatsApp grup mengenai term and condition daripada door prize ini tadi. Jadi teman-teman nanti bisa lagi untuk ngelihat lagi gitu, bagaimana cara mendapatkan door prize dari webinar kita pada pagi hari ini. Oke. It's so sad that we are in the end of our sessions, but it's okay. We will see each other again soon, hopefully. So, sebelum kami tutup, karena kita sudah foto-foto juga, sudah mengabadikan momen dan lain-lain, mungkin aku mau nanya dulu kepada teman-teman sekalian gimana nih tadi kesan-kesannya. Nanti boleh banget loh untuk di-share di chat box gitu bagaimana kesan-kesan selama webinar ini. Bagaimana kesan selama petualangan bersama Dr. Carril tentang mengenal lebih jauh tentang lebah seperti itu. Oke. Nah, sebelum penutup nih teman-teman, boleh juga kita menghimbau teman-teman untuk memfollow IG Kokamuhi di @kokamuhi dan juga Culture of Excellence, Culture and Tourism. No, I'm sorry, Center of Excellence, Culture and Tourism Sekolah Vokasi UGM di @culture.sv yang merupakan kolaborator dari webinar kita pada pagi hari ini. And thank you again for Dr. Carril, for sharing super valuable knowledge for us today. And terima kasih juga untuk para panitia yang sudah terlibat dan menyukseskan acara kita pada pagi hari ini.
Thank you guys so much for the chance to meet you all today and talk. And I think I'm saying this right when I say terima kasih.
Terima kasih.
Teman-teman.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh my God, we love that.
Thank you, Dr. Carril. It's such
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
It's been really fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, we enjoyed a lot. And it's actually a new thing for us. For me especially. Yeah.
You're pros. You did it like pros. It's like you do this all the time. It was very well done.
Thank you.
Glad to hear that. Oke, teman-teman. Tentunya kami juga berterima kasih pada teman-teman yang sudah bersedia turut mendukung webinar hari ini dengan sangat aktif dan antusias dalam memperingati Hari Bumi. Semoga kita dapat bertemu lagi di lain waktu. Dan sebelum kita benar-benar mengakhiri acara pada pagi hari ini, boleh ya teman-teman nanti kalau misalnya aku sama Arya bilang, kok kamu teman-teman bilang, salam superhero. Oke? Siap teman-teman?
Dengan gerakannya ya, jangan lupa. Ya.
Dengan gerakannya, oke?
So Dr. Carril, if we say Kokamuhi, and then you do like Salam Superhero.
Salam Superhero.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, everyone, get ready to turn on the microphone.
Yeah. Okay, and also your camera.
Okay, your camera as well. Okay, count in 3, 2, 1. Kokamuhi.
Salam Superhero. Terima kasih teman-teman. Sampai jumpa di sesi-sesi selanjutnya.
Terima kasih banyak semua.
Terima kasih.
Thank you.
Kembali. Thank you everyone for attending this meeting.
Thank you so much, Dr. Carril.
That
Yeah.
was amazing. You guys are
Thank
so good at this. That was
Oh
my
incredible.
gosh. That is so
Nicely
sweet for you.
done.
And you were like really amazing.
Oh,
That's so
well,
much fun.
that was really well done. You guys are
Yeah.
superheroes.
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 Iya,
Superhero.
kepada partisipan yang lain, karena kita sudah mengakhiri acara kita pada pagi hari ini, teman-teman bisa untuk dipersilahkan untuk meninggalkan ruangan Zoom. Terima kasih. Nanti untuk pertanyaan-pertanyaan selanjutnya akan dikirimkan melalui email dan juga ditunggu e-certificate-nya. Thank you.
Thank you everyone.
Yeah.
Boleh meninggalkan room.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Terima kasih.
Terima kasih.
So it's almost 9 p.m. in your room. Hello.
Oh my god. How cute.
Gorgeous.
You've been
What is-
waiting for me. Say hi.
What is your name, guys?
Hi, what's your name?
You can see
Oh
him.
my god.
Wait, let me turn off the background, then you can see him better. Hang on.
Yeah.
Okay.
Isn't it cool? It's really cool.
Oh my God,
How do I
so
turn it
cool.
off? No?
Oh, what's wrong
You
with
can
that?
click none.
Where's
for
none?
that.
I don't see none.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
wait, it's at the top.
Um,
Got it. There it is.
Oh.
There you go. You can say hi. It's
Hi.
What's your
Oh
name?
my God, they are so cute. How old are you
my
guys?
God. You
This
both are
is
very
Ellie.
pretty.